Welcome to the STEM Pathways with Rohan Sharma podcast, where we dive into the exciting world of science, technology, engineering, and math. In each episode, we share exciting stories, groundbreaking research, and inspiring interviews with experts and enthusiasts who are pushing the boundaries of innovation. Whether you're a student or professional or just curious about how the world works, join us as we explore the endless possibilities of STEM. Let's get started. Today, I'll be interviewing Jos Visser, who holds a master's in computer science from Georgia Tech. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Yeah, so to get started, I wanted to ask what made you choose your major for your undergrad degree and where'd you go?
So I did my undergrad in The Hague in Holland. I'm originally from Holland. And there was no choice for me really. When I grew up, I'm already quite old. Like when I grew up, there were pretty much no computers. And then so when I was in secondary school, the math teacher got a computer in the building and I was immediately hooked. Bought a small home computer myself, started toying with it, and so it was absolutely clear for me that I wanted to study computer science, and that's what I did. It's also the only thing I'm good for, really. So I'm really happy I chose that.
Yeah, so what was your experience like while getting your degree?
Yeah, I mean, so the degree was wonderful. Actually, it was quite good, even though it was already 40 years ago or so that I went to college. I've learned things there that I still use today and that I otherwise would not have learned. So the program was really good. I I went through it quite easily. It was not easy, but I did the work basically and managed to finish in 4 years.
Yeah. So what was your first job out of your bachelor's?
So I joined a bank in the data center, and that was a time when the bank I worked for had three computers, and that's what they did all of their core accounting on, like transactions, mortgages, loans, etc. And so each computer was quite large. These were like they filled entire rooms basically. And I was part of the team that took care of the operating system and the application software on those computers.
Yeah, and how long did you spend there?
I was there for 2 years.
Hmm. Oh, so what'd you do after that?
So then I joined a consulting firm, um, and I basically did that for like quite a few years. Started my own company, did more consulting, and the big change for me came in 2006 when I joined Google in Switzerland.
Yeah. So what was the switch like from owning your own consulting company to going to work at this massive company?
Yeah, so it was interesting. Google wasn't that massive at the time, so it's massive now. When I joined in 2006, it was only a few thousand people, and the office I joined in Switzerland was 150 people, or maybe 200 people. But it was quite a big change. I mean, as an owner of a small company, I mean, we were a small company. I had two business partners. We had a few colleagues working with us. You do whatever needs to be done. You pick up any assignment that you can get in order to make money. And so I did lots of short-term jobs, contracts of like sometimes even as short as half a day, sometimes a week, sometimes a few weeks, sometimes a few months, but that was it. But then when I joined Google, I spent the first 2 years of my life there working on Google Maps. And so that was like a long time on a single project, or like it's a huge service, obviously. But yeah, that gave me way more deep insight in a particular system and a particular set of applications.
Yeah. So when did you come to the US?
In 2016, I met my wife. She's from Boston. And then so either she had to move to Switzerland or I had to move to the US. She didn't speak any German. I already spoke some English, and Google would move me, and so I moved to Boston and joined the Google office there, and I worked on Google Flights for a few years.
Yeah. So you were at Google for a long time and you're there doing like obviously like you said it wasn't that big when you started and now Google is the Google that we know today.
So, yeah,
How much did it change as an employee?
yeah, it changed tremendously. And because, like I said, when I joined, there were a few hundred people in Zurich and a few thousand people at Google overall. When I left, there were a few thousand people in Zurich and like 100,000 people globally. And and nobody escapes corporate gravity. So companies that become big all have to start behaving in a certain way because they get big, there's more attention to them, people have diverse opinions about them, they get sued a lot. Um, you get just you branch out in way more fields, and so yeah, you become a big company, and with that comes bureaucracy and other sorts of things. Like so, it changed massively. But I have many friends who still work there. Still an amazing company to work for. So anyone who can get a chance to join Google, you should totally do that. Still a great company.
Yeah. And then how do you think computer science jobs change in general during that period?
So I've seen massive change over the last few years. When I started studying computer science, there were not that many people who did that. There weren't that many computers, and so there were some computers somewhere, and so we needed a few people to take care of them. And we're now in a world where there's a lot of computers everywhere, and so there's entire fields that didn't exist when I started studying. Like so, for instance, mobile phones, handheld iPads didn't exist when I joined, and so all the apps that are on the web, on mobile, the internet didn't exist when I started studying. So all of these fields came up, and that changed the field tremendously. The other thing is the internet changed everything because that made it much easier to distribute software and to work together as a world to create software. So something like Linux or the whole open source community was made possible by the fact that people from all over the planet could work together to create a free operating system or free applications. And that really didn't exist when I started studying.
Yeah. So what'd you do after Google?
I joined Facebook because they were just right across the street in Boston. The Google office and the Facebook office are 2 blocks away from each other. And a few friends of mine had gone before me and joined Facebook, and so I did that too. Also, a great company to work for. Had a lot of fun there. Um, so yeah, also a great company. And if you can join them, please do because they do amazing things.
So when did you decide that you wanted to go and get a master's?
So that was in, I think maybe 2018 or 2019. Basically, what happened is like a friend of mine uh, asked me, she's like, "Hey, Jas, you want to write me a referral or a reference because I'm attending or I'm planning to attend the online Master of Computer Science program at Georgia Tech." And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, I'll write you a reference, but what is that?" And so he explained to me, and I looked into it, and that looked like a really fun and good program. And one of the things that I realized was that since I graduated from my undergrad, the whole field had changed tremendously, and entire topics that didn't exist before had been developed after I graduated, from my undergrad. So I decided to get a master's, just to top up my knowledge a bit on some fields that I wasn't that that I knew nothing about, basically. And it also seemed like a good hobby. And so I did the online master program. It's a very good program. It's cheap. It's very good. It's distance learning, so that works very well. And I did like some phenomenally fun and interesting courses there uh, on advanced topics that I just hadn't seen before, or fields that didn't exist. Like just to give you an example, like I took a course in computational photography. Digital cameras didn't exist when I graduated first, so that's a completely new field for me. And it gave me a tremendous respect for the software that's running in my cell phone, because it's extremely hard to sort of smurf these bits into shape.
So what are your thoughts on doing like an online master's like you did Georgia Tech versus a typical one where you're at the university?
Yeah, so I don't know what a typical master's or college experience is in the US because, like, uh, in Holland, the university system works very different. We don't have campuses, people don't travel that much. I stayed at home during my time in college and just commuted to school every day. Um, the online program works very well for people that already have a job. So it's way more flexible. You can do it in the evenings, you can do it in the weekend. Well, you have to do it in the evenings and in the weekends. And it's not for me at least, it was not like a life-changing event. It's not that I needed to hang out with people and live on my own and sort of go out. And for me, it was just just wanted the material, watch the lectures, do the exercises, do the labs, mail with some fellow students, do some group work all remotely. That worked very well for me.
Yeah. And then I know the Georgia Tech program specifically has been like really blowing up lately, and a lot of people are doing it. I've also heard it's very hard and has like a really high dropout rate. How difficult was it?
I mean, it's like I said, the quality of the program is really high. Uh, but I think the high dropout rate is because it is just very hard to do that next to the rest of your life. So way earlier in my career, I taught at night college in Holland. So after I graduated from my undergrad and I was working, I got offered a part-time position for like one evening or two evenings a week to teach at college in the evening. And so there I had students that were taking there was no internet, so they had to do it in evenings and follow class in the evenings. And what I saw there is that only the best of the best were able to combine a full-on college program with a job and maybe sometimes a family. And I think that that is the same for the people that attend Georgia Tech here. If you have a full-time job and a life, maybe a partner and a kid or some kids, then doing the program is very tough. For me, it was quite easy because I my kids are already grown up and out of the house, and so I had a lot more time than a lot of other students that were following that program.
Yeah.
The other aspect there is that the online program has less of a disciplining factor. So if you do it online, and that basically means after your work you come home, it requires a lot of discipline, even if you have the time to sit down and jump through the stuff. And it's just very easy for people to say, oh, I'm tired, I want to watch this TV program, I'm going out to dinner, and just not spend the time learning and doing the labs.
Yeah. So what'd you do after you finished up at Facebook?
Facebook. I joined a company called Confluent. There was a startup in the data streaming space. It was the pandemic, so we were all sitting at home. Um, and so I worked remotely for them for like a year and a half, approximately. Um, and then I got laid off because, by that time it was 2021, I think, or the end of 2020, 2021. And that was the time when the great layoffs started in the tech industry. And so Confluent, in my time there, they'd gone IPO, and so that meant that now they had like a much more aggressive schedule of profits that they needed to show, or like getting to profitability that they had to show. And so as part of that, they restructured and let quite a few people go, and I was part of that layoff wave.
Yeah. So what'd you
Um,
do after?
well, I felt sorry for myself for about an afternoon. Got a haircut, had a few beers. And then I started interviewing again, and I found a job at Amazon. Um, Huge company, as you all know. Amazon in Boston, and there I worked in the human resources department. Because one of the things that you might know, but it's at least not widely known, and if I tell people, they're kind of surprised, is that Amazon hires literally 1 million people a year. And on their busiest days, they hire 25,000 people a day. And so all these people need an email address and sometimes a laptop or a phone, and they need to get background checked, and their work authorization need to be checked, and sometimes there needs to be visa support, and they need payroll support, and there's a whole bunch of things they need. And obviously, you need to automate that. And they do that in 65 countries. And so Amazon HR is a huge engineering department who automate a large part of the hiring and firing and all the HR procedures at Amazon. So I worked there on a unit that we call joining Amazon. And joining Amazon is everything from you get the offer to your first start day and everything that happens in between. Like I said, background checks and everything. So I did that for about a year. And then while I was at Amazon, also a phenomenal company, by the way, I learned a lot, worked with some great people, very interesting space. A friend of mine had joined OpenAI, well known from ChatGPT and being a leader in the field of AI. And a friend of mine I was hired as a director there, starting a new team at OpenAI, and he asked me to join. And so I interviewed, and they offered me a job. And since last year, I've been with OpenAI, working on I can't say really it's secret, but it's got something to do with AI.
Yeah. So, I guess besides getting you this job, how has AI changed your job for the past few years?
So I get this question a lot, um, and it's really hard to answer it succinctly because we are at the start of like a phenomenal revolution that will change everything about the way we work. And we're only 1% on that journey. But already the impact is massive. And we use a lot of AI tools in OpenAI internally to do all sorts of things. I think the easiest way to explain this, and it might sound simple, but everyone sort of can see this at work. So obviously we have free access to the most advanced ChatGPT models inside OpenAI, and programming is a thing where it really helps if you've read a lot. Like so, I've been coding for a long time, and there's many different programming languages that I used and still use on a day-to-day basis. And there's just many things we do. And you spend a lot of time researching things like, oh, how do I do X? What API call is there to do Y? Oh, how does this actually work? Is this possible with this tool? These are all things that we wonder about on a day-by-day basis. And Google already helped tremendously there because now you could search through all the documentation, all the manuals, but now with ChatGPT, you have a buddy who has basically read all the internet and can put everything in context for you. And so, and just to give you an example, today I was doing something that's called building a Docker container. Doesn't really matter what it is, but it's like it's a process. You start it and it goes off and it builds something. And there was an error in that build. And then I wanted like, oh, is it possible for me to stop that build halfway through and then debug? And so I asked ChatGPT, like, hey, ChatGPT, is it possible to stop the Docker build halfway through and debug? And ChatGPT goes, yeah, sure, here's 4 ways and give these commands. And so and do that. And one of the 4 was exactly what I needed. So in the simplest possible case, it's already just having someone that you can ask everything and who can answer that based on having read the entire internet. So that's the simplest possible way that you can use AI, but it's already a game changer because what used to take me like an hour of research now it takes me like 2 minutes. Then obviously we use AI coding tools. So I'm like programming, and then the AI reads the code with me and then says like, oh, you now probably want to do this. And I'm like, yeah, I do. Actually, I want to make this change, but that's okay. Or I go through it and it adds the comment and go like, oh, I think this piece of code does this. And it changes the comment string for me. And so it helps me coding, and it definitely makes me at least 25% more efficient just in time by making suggestions, suggesting the comments. I make one change. Like coding is often very repetitive, so I have like a file with like 500 lines of code. At the top, I make a change, and then the AI goes like, "Oh, there's 10 other places in this code where you probably want to make the same change." And look at that. Oh yeah, I want. Makes all the changes for me. So it makes me as an individual knowledge worker way more productive just to have these tools. And to be honest, I think that is the simplest possible sort of use case of AI. We have many more advanced use cases internally that I unfortunately cannot talk about, but there's some amazing stuff happening.
Something I've heard is that using like Copilot or whatever while you're coding makes you bad at coding. Uh, have you noticed your skills change at all? Or do you think that it helps you so much that it's kind of irrelevant?
Well, it's not a tool that makes a bad coder a good coder. It's a tool that makes a good coder a faster good coder. It's a tool that makes a good coder who uses a language that they don't know very well an adequate coder in that language. And so, but if you don't fundamentally understand what's going on, it will not help you. And now I'll give you an example from my other field. So the one of the things that we didn't touch upon, but I also got myself a law degree somewhere halfway through, and so I regularly write legal papers. And then you can ask a legal question like, "Hey, ChatGPT, like, is this legal?" And then ChatGPT will go like, "Yes, because," or "No, because." And then if you don't understand anything about the law, you can ask that question. You can copy the answer, but you don't know if it's 100% correct. And it's the same with coding. Like you can, the bot can write the code for you. Often you still need to make a few changes. If you don't know what's going on, you don't know which changes you make. And so if you're a bad coder, AI will make you a faster bad coder, which is terrible because that means you write more bad code. And that's definitely not what we need in the world. But good coders get a lot of help from that assist.
Yeah.
Like it's compared to a car. Like if you're a bad driver and I give you a faster car, you will not become a better driver. You'll be a faster bad driver and therefore more dangerous.
Yeah. So for my final question, I wanted to ask if you have one piece of advice for someone who's still in high school or early in college wanting to follow a similar career path as you.
Yeah, so the actually I wrote a column about this. So I have a weekly newsletter on josvisser.substack.com. And because I get this question a lot. People go like, "Oh, you've had such a big career, like mm, relatively speaking, that is. It's not that I'm Elon Musk or anything, but yeah, I'm doing well." But they asked me like, "What should I study?" And then I got like two pieces of advice for that. Like, so first of all, study something that you like, but that you can also make money with. You should never study something just because you can make money with it. Because if you're not fundamentally interested, then you're just not going to do the work. But also don't study something that is super fun, but you can't make any money with because at the end of the day, we all need a paycheck. Like, and so make a smart choice between this is economically viable and I kind of like it. So that's my first advice. The second advice is it's really hard to predict the future, but there's one thing that always works well, and that is excellent execution. And what I mean by that is the following: like the everything that you do in order to be successful at it, you need to be good at it. And in order to be good at it, you need to just execute well on it. And by that I mean never be content with like doing the minimum. Like the because if you do the minimum, it might be good enough, but you'll never be great, and no one will ever promote you or hire you because you're just not excellent. So be excellent, but do that by doing the work by, I mean, and it's really boring. Old people say the most boring things, but like, study hard, get good grades, etc. Always, pretty much everything your parents told you kind of is true, but it's not always the most exciting thing. I totally get it. Um, but yeah, and to give you an example, I see a lot of junior engineers that use a system and they know how to use it kind of, but they don't really understand it. And the problem with that is that the moment something goes wrong, they can't help themselves. They can't debug, they can't solve the problem, they have to ask someone else. It is always better to be able to solve your own problems. You can still ask for help sometimes, but even if you ask for help, people are much more likely to help someone who has done a lot of the work themselves already. So don't be content with just using something. Always try to understand how it actually works on the inside, because that will make you a better everything, a better engineer, a better musician, a better painter, a better, I don't care. Excellent execution is where it's at.
All right then. Thank you for joining me on the podcast today.
Thank you so much, Rowan. I'm very, very glad that you invited me to join, and I'm very happy that I could answer your questions.